I'm never going to a red carpet event that I'm not in the film of, I don't want the attention when I don't need it.
Tom Holland, the actor who has defined Peter Parker and Spider-Man for a generation of fans, and who has been central to the MCU's success across multiple major film releases, has announced that he is quitting the Marvel Cinematic Universe entirely, and is signing a groundbreaking multi-picture deal with Warner Brothers. Discovery to become the centerpiece of DC Studios' major film strategy going forward. According to multiple sources, and according to Holland's own statements released through social media and entertainment media outlets, the actor reached a breaking point with how Marvel Studios and Disney have been treating him creatively, and how the studios have been restricting his creative freedom and his artistic agency. Holland's announcement came in the form of a lengthy Instagram statement, where the actor detailed years of frustration with how Marvel Studios operates and how Disney treats its actors as disposable assets rather than as creative collaborators. In his statement, Holland said, "I have spent the last decade building Peter Parker into something meaningful to audiences worldwide. I have invested my time, my creativity, and my emotional labor into this character. What I learned is that Marvel and Disney do not value that investment. They view me as a puppet rather than as a collaborator. Kevin Feige does not want my input. The studio does not want my creative vision. They want me to show up, deliver lines as written, and not ask questions. I have spent years on projects where I have no control over my character's arc or the direction of films bearing my name. I am no longer willing to play that role. I am leaving the MCU. I have signed with Warner Brothers and DC, and I am excited about the creative freedom and creative partnership this opportunity offers." This statement sent immediate shockwaves through the entertainment industry. Within minutes of Holland's announcement, entertainment journalists were reporting on the news and analyzing what his departure meant for the MCU and for Marvel Studios' future plans. Social media flooded with reactions from fans, industry observers, and other actors responding to Holland's announcement and to his criticisms of how Marvel operates. According to sources close to the negotiations, Warner Brothers and DC Studios offered Holland a deal worth somewhere in the range of $200 million or more for a multi-picture commitment that positions him as the cornerstone of DC's theatrical strategy going forward. The deal includes significant creative control, including input on scripts, input on directors, and participation in character development. Holland's announcement came as a shock to Kevin Feige and to Marvel Studios' leadership, despite what some industry insiders claimed were years of tensions between Holland and the studio. Holland had been the public face of the MCU for years, appearing in multiple major films and being absolutely central to commercial success, particularly around Spider-Man films, which have been among the highest-grossing movies in the franchise's history. According to sources familiar with Holland's frustrations, the actor had become increasingly frustrated with how Marvel Studios operates and with the lack of creative input that actors receive on MCU projects. Holland had spent years watching directors be replaced, watching scripts be rewritten by Marvel without input from actors, and watching supposedly standalone Spider-Man films become heavily integrated into MCU storytelling without meaningful actor participation in how that integration happened. Sources indicated that Holland had made multiple attempts to have conversations with Kevin Feige and Marvel leadership about giving him more creative input and control over his character and the films featuring his character. But these attempts had been frustrating for Holland, with Feige consistently prioritizing his own vision rather than treating Holland as a creative collaborator. Holland also became frustrated with the contractual arrangements that bound him to both Sony and Disney and to Marvel Studios through complicated agreements that made it difficult for him to pursue opportunities outside the Marvel sphere. Holland felt trapped in the Spider-Man franchise and restricted in his ability to pursue diverse creative opportunities. When DC Studios and Warner Brothers reached out with a serious creative and financial offer, Holland began seriously contemplating whether leaving Marvel was what he wanted to do. Sources close to Holland indicated that the actor found the DC offer compelling precisely because it offered creative control and creative partnership that Marvel never provided. The deal that Warner Brothers offered to Holland includes multiple films over several years and positions him in a lead role in the DC universe that gives him significant creative input and significant voice in how his character is developed and integrated into DC's broader storytelling. The financial terms are substantially better than what he was apparently earning from his MCU deal, with reported compensation reaching figures that dwarf his previous Marvel compensation. Holland's statement about being Disney's puppet resonated strongly with other actors in the entertainment industry who have expressed similar frustrations with Marvel and with how Kevin Feige operates. Several major actors who have worked on MCU projects have shared stories about similar experiences where they felt they had very little creative input on their projects. The departure of Tom Holland has major commercial implications for the MCU and for Marvel Studios. Spider-Man has been one of the most commercially successful and most beloved characters in the MCU. The Spider-Man films have been among the highest-grossing films in the franchise. Tom Holland has been the face of the younger generation of MCU heroes. According to reports from entertainment industry analysts, the loss of Holland could have significant impact on the commercial viability of future Spider-Man films and future MCU projects featuring Spider-Man and Peter Parker. The character has been central to multiple MCU films and multiple MCU storylines across years of interconnected storytelling. Disney and Marvel Studios now face the situation of trying to recast the role of Peter Parker/Spider-Man, a role that Holland has defined in the minds of audiences over the past decade. Finding an equally beloved and equally commercially viable actor to play the role could be very difficult for the studio. The transition period could result in significant box office complications and could require major rewrites of planned MCU films and storylines. Holland's departure also sends a loud message to other MCU actors about what happens when studios do not treat their talent fairly or with respect. Holland has clearly demonstrated that even high-profile actors working on some of the biggest and most commercially successful franchises in film history can walk away if they feel mistreated or creatively restricted. Several other major MCU actors have recently expressed frustration with how Marvel operates, including Jeremy Renner and Jon Bernthal, both of whom have recently quit MCU projects over salary and creative control disputes. Holland's very public departure and his public criticisms of how Disney and Marvel operate could inspire other actors to consider leaving the franchise if they feel mistreated. Warner Brothers and DC Studios are celebrating the signing of Holland as a major coup and as a major success in their efforts to build a strong and star-studded DC film slate that can compete with the MCU. The addition of Holland to DC represents a major talent acquisition that signals Warner Brothers' commitment to making DC films major competitors with Marvel's ongoing commercial success. The apparent timeline for Holland's transition from Marvel to DC is apparently still being worked out, but sources indicate that he may appear in the final MCU appearance that is apparently contractually obligated before apparently transitioning fully to DC projects. However, sources also indicate that Holland may potentially attempt to exit even those remaining contractual obligations if he feels the creative environment continues to be restrictive. Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios leadership released a brief statement saying that they respect Holland's decision and wish him well, but the statement notably did not address any of the specific criticisms Holland made about how Marvel operates or about the lack of creative input actors receive. The statement simply said, "Tom has been a tremendous part of the MCU family, and we wish him the best in his future endeavors." However, behind the scenes, sources indicate that Marvel Studios leadership was apparently extremely frustrated and apparently extremely upset by Holland's departure and by his very public criticisms of Kevin Feige and how Marvel operates. Sources indicate that executives felt betrayed by Holland's departure and that they were particularly unhappy with how publicly Holland aired his grievances rather than handling the situation more privately. For Tom Holland, the decision to leave Marvel and the MCU represents both a professional risk and a significant opportunity to have more creative control and more creative partnership than he had while working for Marvel and Disney. The actor is betting that his talent and his fan appeal will translate into success at DC, and that working with a studio that values creative partnership will be more rewarding creatively and professionally than continuing to work for Marvel. Holland's recent work on Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey apparently gave him a taste of what collaborative filmmaking with a visionary director could be like, and sources indicate that this experience may have further convinced him that he wanted out of the Marvel system. Holland's departure also raises broader questions about how major studios treat their talent and about the importance of creative collaboration between directors, studios, and actors on major film projects. Holland's criticisms of Marvel suggest that the studio's sometimes dictatorial approach to filmmaking may be costing valuable talent and may be limiting creative potential by not incorporating insights from the actors who embody these beloved characters. The commercial implications of Holland's departure are significant and far-reaching. Spider-Man films have historically been among Sony and Marvel's biggest earners. No Way Home grossed nearly $3 billion worldwide. The upcoming Spider-Man Brand New Day was scheduled for summer 2026 release and was expected to be another major commercial event for Marvel. With Holland's departure, the project now faces massive complications. According to entertainment industry analysts, the loss of Tom Holland could significantly impact the commercial viability of future Spider-Man films and future MCU projects. The character has been central to multiple interconnected storylines across years of MCU films. Rewriting these stories without Spider-Man could require major script changes and narrative restructuring that could take months or even years to complete. The situation also raises questions about whether audiences will still be interested in watching new Spider-Man films without Tom Holland in the role. Holland's portrayal of Peter Parker has become iconic and has become central to how audiences view and understand the character. Another casting change could potentially alienate significant portions of the fan base. Beyond the immediate commercial implications, Holland's departure sends a message throughout Hollywood about the value of creative control and the importance of treating major stars as creative partners rather than as hired performers. If Holland's success at DC with more creative input exceeds what he was achieving at Marvel, with restricted creative control, it could fundamentally shift how studios approach actor relationships on major films. The situation with Holland also apparently raises questions about Kevin Feige's leadership style and his approach to managing talent. Feige has built the MCU into the most successful franchise in cinema history, but critics have noted that his approach sometimes seems to involve tight control over creative decisions and sometimes seems to minimize input from actors and from directors. If talented actors start leaving because they feel creatively restricted, it could eventually impact the quality and creative vitality of MCU projects. Several entertainment analysts have noted that Marvel Studios appears to be facing increasing challenges in retaining major talent. Beyond Holland, Jeremy Renner, Jon Bernthal, and others have recently left MCU projects or have expressed frustration with working for the studio. If this pattern continues, and if more major talent starts leaving, it could eventually impact the overall quality of MCU films, and could potentially impact the franchise's ongoing commercial success. The timing of Holland's departure is also significant, because it comes at a moment when the MCU is apparently going through significant creative and commercial challenges. Several recent MCU projects have underperformed at the box office compared to earlier films. The Phase 4 and Phase 5 projects have apparently received mixed critical reception. There is apparently growing audience fatigue with superhero films in general, and with MCU films specifically. Holland's departure apparently adds to these challenges and apparently could accelerate audience migration away from MCU films if fans feel that the quality of the films is declining as talented actors leave and as creative control becomes increasingly centralized in the hands of studio executives rather than being shared with talented directors and actors. For Warner Bros. And DC Studios, Holland's signing represents a major victory in their ongoing efforts to build a competitive superhero film slate. DC has apparently struggled in recent years to match the commercial and critical success of Marvel. The addition of Holland to the DC roster apparently gives the studio a major star who brings with him significant fan loyalty and significant commercial appeal. The question that remains is whether DC can effectively utilize Holland and whether the studio can build compelling films that justify the massive investment they are making in the actor. If DC Studios can successfully integrate Holland into their theatrical universe, and if they can leverage his talent effectively, they could have a significant competitive advantage as audiences continue to evaluate the merits of Marvel's restrictive creative approach versus DC's apparently more collaborative approach. Holland's departure also raises questions about what will happen to specific MCU projects that are apparently currently in development. Spider-Man: Brand New Day was apparently scheduled for summer 2026 release and was apparently positioned as a major event film for Marvel. With Holland's departure, this film now apparently needs major rewrites and recasting. The production timeline for the project could be significantly impacted. Additionally, Spider-Man was apparently planned to play a role in both Avengers, Doomsday and Avengers: Secret Wars, the two major Avengers films that are apparently scheduled for 2026 and 2027 release. These films now apparently need to be rewritten to accommodate Holland's departure. The interconnected nature of MCU storytelling means that removing Spider-Man from these films could require substantial changes to narrative and character arcs throughout multiple projects. The financial implications are also substantial. Marvel and Sony apparently had been counting on Holland's continued involvement in Spider-Man projects to drive box office revenue. The rebranding costs, the production costs of rewrites, and the potential loss of box office revenue if the new Spider-Man projects underperform could total hundreds of millions of dollars or more. Beyond the commercial implications, Holland's departure has created an apparent PR nightmare for Marvel Studios and for Disney. Kevin Feige's leadership style and his approach to managing talent are now apparently under intense industry scrutiny. Entertainment journalists and entertainment industry observers are apparently asking whether Feige's reportedly dictatorial approach to creative decisions is apparently sustainable, or whether the studio needs to apparently change how it approaches talent management. Multiple entertainment analysts have apparently suggested that Marvel Studios should apparently consider changing its approach to actor relationships, and should work to incorporate more input from major stars into creative decisions on their projects. Some analysts have apparently suggested that the industry is apparently shifting toward a model where major stars have more creative control and more creative agency, and that studios that fail to adapt to this shift risk losing major talent to competitors who offer more collaborative relationships. The reactions from other actors and filmmakers have been notably mixed. Some actors have apparently publicly expressed support for Holland's decision and have apparently praised his willingness to stand up for creative input and creative control. Other industry figures have apparently expressed caution about Holland's approach, suggesting that leaving a major franchise without completing contractual obligations could apparently damage his reputation or could apparently lead to legal complications. Some entertainment lawyers have apparently noted that Holland may apparently face contractual complications from his departure, potentially including legal action from Marvel, Sony, or Disney over his failure to apparently fulfill remaining contractual obligations. However, sources close to Holland apparently indicate that his legal team has apparently reviewed the situation carefully and apparently believes he has sufficient grounds to apparently exit his remaining obligations. The broader cultural implications of Holland's departure are also significant. Holland's very public statement about being treated as a puppet rather than as a collaborator apparently reflects broader conversations happening throughout the entertainment industry about power dynamics between studios and talent, about the importance of creative collaboration, and about whether actors deserve meaningful input on projects featuring their images and their likenesses. Holland's decision to make his complaints public rather than handling them privately has also apparently sparked conversations about whether public criticism of studios is apparently an appropriate strategy for talent seeking better treatment, or whether such public statements apparently damage the industry relationships that actors apparently need to maintain long-term careers. Entertainment industry observers have apparently noted that Holland's approach apparently mirrors in some ways the approaches taken by other major stars in different industries who have apparently decided to speak publicly about industry practices they apparently view as unfair or as restrictive. Whether this trend continues, and whether it leads to broader changes in how studios approach talent management, apparently remains to be seen. For now, Tom Holland has apparently made his statement, and has signed with DC. The entertainment industry will apparently be watching carefully to see whether his DC projects apparently deliver on the promise of more creative collaboration, and whether they apparently produce films that resonate with audiences and that justify the massive investment DC is apparently making in the actor. How Holland's story apparently unfolds could apparently shape how studios and talent approach these relationships for years to come.